Welcome to part 3 of the Washington Food Coalition Volunteer Management Series. Let's talk about leadership level volunteers.
We are going to talk about leadership level volunteers. We're going to define what they are. We're going to talk about engaging them. We're going to talk about professionals who come in and do work for us, and we're going to talk about boards just a little bit. I don't want to get too deeply into boards because that's not what we're here to talk about. Nancy, let's start this with an initial question.
What leadership roles are performed by volunteers at your organization? Use that chat box. Just tell us what leadership roles. So we've talked a lot about board, but what other leadership roles are performed by volunteers? I know Leon is going to say all of the roles because he really truly has an all volunteer food bank, which is amazing. I refer to that all the time. So,
and you know, that's something that boards have to deal with if they are if they are working in organizations that are all volunteer, because those board members often also function as the staff members, and they have to know what hat they're wearing when.
Exactly. So Julia has a board. What else? I mean, I know you're all probably nonprofits and you have boards. Are there other leadership roles? Do you have a volunteer, a volunteer manager, a volunteer, anything technical, accountant, lawyer?
Yeah, your committees.
Committee members. Awesome. Well, let's dive in.
All right.
What do we need to know about this?
Okay. Well, leadership level volunteers, what I really want to talk about here is leadership level volunteers and mutually beneficial relationships. Your board, your committee members, and leaders of programs or events, and your professional volunteers. We also talked, I want to mention something else here. Remember, I mentioned the estimated value of volunteer hours for reporting purposes. For professionals, you need to remember people who are donating their time in their own fields, like in accounting, doing accounting work, or a lawyer giving legal advice, they are reported at their usual billable rate, not at the estimated value. And that's considered an in-kind donation, and it's probably going to be included in your financial reporting. So, and regular volunteer hours are usually not included in your financial reporting. So that's who we mean by professionals, are people who are donating their services, pro bono donations to your organization. Your other leadership level volunteers are your board and your committee leaders, your event chairs. And we sometimes forget, especially with board members, that they are volunteers too, and they need to be encouraged and they need to be included when you inform and you recognize your other volunteers. They, like all volunteers, need to have clearly articulated jobs to perform, and they can help you and lead your volunteer program to success. It's a huge topic. It's a long conversation, but and we're only going to talk today about engaging and retaining these volunteers by leveraging their recognition. So let's look at the next slide. And this is primarily what I want to talk about here. Okay, here's the premise. Large, high-profile nonprofits have access to high-profile, affluent, well-connected boards, community members from businesses and the social world and the entertainment industry. And not all of us have that luxury. For most organizations, our board members are mid-level managers and entrepreneurs and small business owners and retirees and students and regular people like you and me from all walks of life. What they have in common is that they are leaders. They are leaders by the very fact, by definition, because they are your board members, your committee chairs, the professionals who are working with you. They are leaders. And one of the John C. Maxwell wrote Developing the Leader Within You, and it's a workbook that's used by leadership things and leadership programs all over the country. And one of the first things that he talks about is influence. Leaders have to lead people, and we have to find ways to help our leadership level volunteers become more influential, so that they have more stroke in the community, and they can attract more resources to our organization. So how do we do that? How do we help them become those more high profile people? I'm having trouble at this point after 3 hours, right? More, how do we help them become more influential? And that's by leveraging recognition through the media, print and electronic, with press releases, with articles, with human interest stories, through blogs and social media, through external awards and recognition programs, through drawing attention back to the work, to the successes and the achievements of those leadership level volunteers. Not only does this make them more influential, more prominent, and more able to bring in funding and resources and attention to your food bank, but it helps them in their careers and their businesses, building their own success in their own fields. So this in turn goes a long way to solving the problems that we have about retention and turnover and motivation among board and committee members. If their involvement with us is also part of their career or their business strategy, it helps them with their goals in their lives, then it's going to serve them while it serves you. We're serving each other. They can't talk about their involvement without sounding self-serving. They can't talk about what great volunteers they are because that's creepy. But you can talk about them and they can talk about what a great organization you are. And I've spoken to dozens of leadership groups and professional organizations and people who are active in the community. And it's almost always an aha moment for those people who start with a keen sense of wanting to be involved. Then they start talking about leveraging recognition into support for the nonprofit, and they come to understand that leadership level community involvement is a two-way street. So remember, a personal agenda isn't necessarily an ulterior motive. It's usually not too hard to tell the difference between somebody who cares and somebody who doesn't. A personal agenda that aligns with the mission and the good of your organization can help accomplish great things, and it can support your work. So that's what I mean by leveraging recognition, making sure that everybody rises together and finding out what they need. Let's look at the next slide.
I think I'm
remembering to keep them engaged, remembering that they're individuals and they have different needs, and you won't know what those needs are unless you ask them and unless you engage them in that particular conversation. And when boards and committees and pros work together to design and to deliver plans and programs, they own it and they will work to achieve those goals because they help to create them. And that goes for fundraising, it goes for recruiting volunteers, it goes for putting on events, it goes for orientations and trainings, it goes for outreach, for spreading the word. Leaders are going to lead if we let them and if we help them. So make sure they have the tools to do whatever job they are doing in their leadership roles. If they're being asked to fundraise or recruit, they need talking points. They need leave-behinds. They need the training to do that work. You can't just ask your leaders to go out and do something without giving them the tools and the training to make it happen. On the next slide, just some things to think about, some things to watch out for. As I mentioned, not every personal agenda is an ulterior motive. Some align and actually assist missions of your organizations, but sometimes board members and committee members and leaders have past relationships with an agency or with staff members, and sometimes they want to block constructive change because they see it in a past lens. And sometimes board members have an unhealthy attachment to an agency, and leadership level volunteers often have some personal experience in other areas of an agency that colors the way that they think about the agency. So it's important that leadership level volunteers realize that they can't pull staff members off their usual job duties to perform extra tasks. And we're not going to get any deeper into boards here. There's a series that Nancy is putting together. I know Washington Nonprofits has a series. It's out there, the training for that. But just things to watch out for when you're working with leadership level volunteers. They will be leaders. They will step in, and you want to give them constructive instruction on the way to do that, or they will find a way to do that that might not be what you want them to do. So here we're on the home stretch. What are some common mistakes? We've talked about this a lot throughout, but the most common mistake is setting expectations and then not meeting them. Your volunteer offer online or whatever looks and feels great. It looks great on the website, great on your video presentation, and then you don't follow through at some point. And it doesn't match. The assignment doesn't match, or the support doesn't match, or the reporting doesn't match. And that sets up a cognitive dissonance. There is nothing worse than recruiting a bunch of volunteers and then there's no assignment or no communication or no questions or no supervision or no place to work. And that's that cognitive dissonance. It looks really good, but then it's not, because it's not supported with the appropriate infrastructure. So that's what we've set up today, is you being able to create or tweak or whatever you need to do to set up that infrastructure. Another common mistake relates to not preserving and passing on the knowledge that volunteers discover while they're working for you. Sometimes new volunteers have to reinvent the wheel in the moment because the experience of their predecessors hasn't been passed on to them. So be sure to capture and document not only the how-to, but also the observations that your volunteers met. And if there are any other pitfalls that you want to discuss more or you want to talk about, please put them in the chat and we will talk about them. I also want to mention that there is a resources list in the back of your workbook, and it's got some links there for you. And that there we are. There we are, and we are ready to talk about. Let's see if you have any questions or any comments on this section about leadership level volunteers and about leveraging your recognition.
Yeah, and we're towards the end, so if folks want to turn on their cameras so we can see each other, but what questions? What do you see going on leadership level volunteers? Questions, thoughts, reactions, things you do well. Okay. Looking at the chat box.
I think for me, I think we do some things that are adequate, but we could be a lot better. And with COVID, we've dropped the ball on a lot of things, so we've got to figure out how to work on improving best practice in this new normal.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate you saying that, Stephanie. And we did a whole, I co-host the nonprofit radio show. And so if you want like a little piece of learning, listen to the nonprofit radio show. And we did a whole segment on stress. And I just want to say that it's okay if you have dropped a lot of balls. It's okay. Like, that's not something any of you should feel bad about.
No.
You're human and you're awesome and you're doing the best you can.
And you're doing the most important work in the world.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions, thoughts, reactions before I ask you one mandatory must respond last question? You can delay, but you're not going to. So I want to, I hope that you've learned something, and I hope you've had a chance to reflect, and I hope you've had a chance to connect with each other. So I'd love for you to use the chat box right now to share one thing that you are walking away with that you're going to take action on. You can unmute yourself. You can use the chat box, but I really need to hear from every single person. Otherwise, I'll be sad. Unmute yourself. Let's have a conversation. What are your next steps? Tammy.
one of the things that we're working on is actually creating a hub for volunteer management. I'm an AmeriCorps Vista, and I assist the volunteer and activities coordinator at EFN. And we're working on creating, because we do serve 80 plus food pantries, and a lot of them they depend on volunteers to keep themselves running. And Nourish Pierce County has 15 plus food pantries, and they only have about 10 staff members to full-time staff members, and all the rest of the workings are volunteers. So for that reason, we were trying to create a hub and come up with a lot of what we're talking about in regards to volunteer management and streamlining a system for the food pantries. And so what I'm going to walk away with is the organization of how things were broken down in this presentation, because it gave me a complete outline on where we need to go and what points need to be touched upon. And it was awesome feedback from the group, and seeing what everybody's needs are.
That is great. That is great. And I know Washington Food Coalition does such a great job knowing who's doing what. So I imagine there'll be some kind of cross connection here.
Mm-hmm.
I see in the chat box that Julia's going to do birthday cards for volunteers. They do them for staff, but not for volunteers. Laura Ashley, volunteer recognition. Hermina, feel free to email me. I love that you've dropped in your email address. And if I would love to share in the follow-up your contact information for each other. If any of you have a problem with that, of sharing just this group of folks who have joined this call, please let me know and I'll take your name off. But I think it'd be nice if you could connect. Stephanie is going to pursue software, pull in staff to focus on volunteer management. Marisol creating a volunteer management program that's well documented. That volunteer playlist. Do a better job providing key volunteers with opportunities to be known and celebrated in the community. Tammy's put her email in there, and I'll share the list with everybody. I haven't cross-checked that that's everybody, but I'm excited to see everything that you'll be doing. Are there any last questions, thoughts, ideas that you would like to share with each other? Okay. You will be getting a follow-up email from me, so look for it. It will have the recording. It will have a cleaned up version of that Google Doc, because I want you to have it nicer than the crazy platypus formatting that happens in real time. Trish, if you would like to say any final words, but I have been delighted to be with you all. And Ginny, thank you for your wisdom.
Thank you. I have been delighted to be here too. And thank you for your comments in here. You have, we have all learned from each other. Those of us who have been presenters here, you know, that hasn't excluded us from learning from you too. So there was
Awesome.
Lots of wisdom in this room. Thank you very much.
Yes, this is Trish. Yes, there was. Some of the Seattle volunteer coordinators are trying to meet monthly. So I know that when we had our conversations earlier with Ginny, they invited anyone who wants to join. So if folks from Port Angeles or other programs from EFN want to be a part of that monthly kind of volunteer coordinators gathering, just shoot me an email at Trish at wafoodcoalition.org, and I'll let them know you might be interested in being a part of that. I think they actually have a call this Friday. But thank you all for being here. I know our group kind of dwindled a little bit, but I appreciate it, and appreciate Jenny's time and Nancy's time in pulling this all together, and a special thanks to the Washington State Department of Agriculture, who helped cover the cost of hosting this today. We appreciate their support. So thank you all. Have a great rest of your week, and keep your eye out for other trainings we'll be offering.
Sounds great. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the Washington Food Coalition Volunteer Management Series. If you have any questions at all,
please reach out. We can't wait to talk to you.